We can start from one small scene that, somehow, feels bigger than it should be. A simple game. The rules are light. Laugh there. Relaxed atmosphere. But in the midst of that simplicity, there was something that made many stop for a moment. Watch it again. Not because of the rules, not because of the prizes. But rather because of the way the two people in it move and react to each other. The game was supposed to be just about finding something hidden. No drama demands. No emotional demands. However, since the beginning, Jimin and Jungkook have shown something different. They don't just focus on the game. They focus on each other. Every step feels synchronous. Every reaction feels connected. Jungkook moves with confidence. Calm down. As if he was not in front of the camera, but in a safe room. Jimin, on the other hand, didn't seem surprised. It doesn't seem awkward. It follows the flow in the same natural way. As if they already understood each other's rhythm without the need to talk. There are many pairs of colleagues who look close. However, this one feels different. Their closeness does not look far-fetched. It doesn't feel like something learned. It looks like a habit. Something that existed long before the camera was turned on, and that's where people start to pay attention. It's not because they're looking for a thrill. But because there is an aura of comfort that is difficult to ignore. This aura is normal for us, although it may seem excessive to others. Every little laugh, every light gesture, every brief look felt like their own language. A language that is not explained, but is immediately understood by both of them. And perhaps, precisely because of that, it feels so real. There are moments that look simple. But when put together, it forms a pattern. Patterns of togetherness. Patterns of mutual trust. A pattern that usually only arises when two people already know each other very well. People can call it cute. You could call it adorable. It's called fan service. But for those who are really paying attention, this feels deeper than that. It feels like two people who are really comfortable in the same space, and then comes the interesting part of the game. A clue. Words that sound light. About how people look at them. About the impact they left. The staff is simple. About natural attraction. About non-made-up charms. About the sweet impression that appears without effort, but Jungkook caught it differently, that he doesn't interpret it as a matter of appearance. He sees it as something more personal. About how people see them when they're together. About how their togetherness is read. About how close they are is the subject of conversation, and Jungkook's reaction at the time was very honest. That he laughed. A little embarrassed. A little too much. But not an empty laugh. There is consciousness there. Awareness that he knows. He knows how they are perceived. He knows that their togetherness is often perceived as more than usual, but most importantly, he doesn't deny that it does not withdraw. Does not change the attitude. Not trying to improve the image. It's just accepting. With a smile. With a little drama. Then proceed as usual, and that's where a lot of people feel touched, because there is something honest in that attitude. He does not deny their closeness. It does not rule out the way people see them. He just admitted that yes, it does look that way. And yes, that's part of them. Also interesting is his choice of words. Jungkook rarely separates himself from Jimin. It says, we, more often than I. It is as if, even in small games, he does not perceive himself as a separate individual from that togetherness, and this is no coincidence. It's consistent. This repeats itself. This is a pattern. Whenever they are together, there is always a sense that they are moving as a small whole. Two people, one rhythm. Two voices, one groove. Two laughs, one mood. To the public, this can feel too close. It can feel too intimate. It can feel too intense. But to them, it seems that this is just normal, and maybe that's what makes it all feel so powerful, because what is seen on the screen is not something forced. Not something planned. Unless something grows. Something that is formed from habits, time and beliefs that they're not trying to convince anyone. They're not trying to prove anything. They're just being themselves, and precisely because of this, many people find it difficult to take their eyes off, because there are relationships that can be faked. But there are also those who cannot. That feels real even without words. Which is legible even without explanation, and Jungkooks, in their own way, often fall into the latter category, without announcement. Without an official statement. Without big sentences, just the way they stand. The way they laugh. The way they respond to each other, and what makes it all feel even more powerful is how the moment doesn't stand alone. It was not a separate incident. It was just a small point of their long series of habits together. If noticed over time, the same pattern continues to appear. The way they sit. The way they wait for each other. The way they naturally look for each other in a crowded room, there is a clear sense of security. It is not a sense of security that is created for the camera, but a sense of security that arises when a person knows that nearby there is a person whom he can trust. Nearby there is a person who does not demand excessive explanations. Who understands without the need for many words, and that's where a lot of people feel connected. Because in a fast-paced, spotlight-filled world, finding two people who can still look that calm together is rare. They are not in a hurry. They are not noisy. They just present each other. Sometimes they laugh over trifles. Sometimes they stay silent longer than necessary. But nothing feels awkward. Their silence is not an empty pause. Their silence felt like a cozy space. Unnecessary space filled with words. Many people call this chemistry. Some also call it bonding. Some consider it just an old habit. But whatever the name, one thing is hard to deny: there is continuity. There is consistency. And there is a sense of, this is familiar to us, that constantly arises. Interestingly, while they are aware of the public spotlight, they don't appear to be trying to change that dynamic. They keep walking the same path. It remains to respond in the same way. Keep smiling the same way. It's as if the outside world is just a background, not a determinant, and perhaps, that's why many people find their little moments so meaningful. Because there is no impression made. There is no sense of being playing a role. There are only two people who seem to really know each other. Whenever the camera captures them in a relaxed state, there is always the impression that this is not the first time they have been like this. This is not something new to learn. This is a long-established habit, and the habit, slowly, becomes a story, stories that are not officially written. A story that was never announced. But a story that can be felt by anyone who pays attention long enough, not one big moment. But through a small collection of moments. Through a brief look. Through a smile that appears for no apparent reason. Through a presence that never feels forced, therein lies its strength. They are not trying to convince anyone that they are close. They just look close, and sometimes, what looks honest is much more convincing than what is explained at length, because there are things that cannot be learned. Cannot be trained. Cannot be composed. It only grows, slowly, from the time spent together, and maybe, that's what people see when they watch Jungkook, not just two idols. Not just group mates. But two people who already share too many moments to be able to pretend to be ordinary, and as long as they keep going in the same rhythm, the story will live on, untitled. Without announcement, just the way they were together.